Let's start with the basics. If you can introduce yourself, where are you located and what's your martial art styles?
Okay. Hi, everyone. My name is Jessica. I'm from New Zealand originally, and I am located in Saitama, which is north of Tokyo in Japan. And my martial art, I'm a practitioner of Kyudo, which is using a bow and arrow. And yeah.
Roche. I'm from New York City, and my specialty is in Naginata.
Okay, hi everybody. So I'm Stephanie, and originally from South Africa. I was born in Johannesburg and was in Cape Town before I came to Japan. So I'm located in Chiba, in Uraisu, which is right on the edge of Tokyo, and mostly is famous for Disneyland. We have Tokyo Disneyland.
Yeah.
And I study Aikido, Yoshinkan Aikido, at my dojo with my husband, who is Tsuneo Ando, who is our teacher here.
Okay, my first encounter with martial arts actually was in New Zealand when I was probably in middle school, or we'd call it intermediate school. My brother started karate, so I didn't have any sort of connection with it at all. However, he would have his like gi and he would go to his keiko. And at the time, I didn't really kind of think of anything of it, because karate is pretty popular in New Zealand, and it's very well wide-reaching around the whole world, I think. But going back to the first time I saw Kyudo, which was about 11 or so years ago, when I just had my first child and we were going to Hanami, which is cherry blossom viewing. And there is a dojo that you can see straight into the shajo where they're shooting in the middle of this big park in Saitama, close by where I live. So we were just there to go and check out the cherry blossoms, and we happened upon, I think it was like a Saturday, and there were men and women doing keiko, their Kyudo keiko. So I stopped for a while and I was just watching it because I hadn't ever seen anything like it before. And it really brought me back to my childhood when I was like, it's different, obviously, because it's not a Japanese bow, but when I was using like, I was doing Robin Hood and like pirate, and I used to dress up and like have my bow and arrow and my swords, and I was just like, wow, this is so cool. So it kind of like brought me back to childhood, but also in the same time, I was watching it. It was so calming and really, really relaxing. Just watching the repetitive cycle of the hasitsu over and over again. So I found myself standing there for like 10 or 15 minutes like a stalker. And actually quite a few people are watching there. So I was just like, wow, this is so cool. I have to go and find out what it is because I really want to start. So that was when I decided. However, actually getting around to starting, it proved to be quite challenging for various reasons, which we can talk about later if you want.
Okay. So it was like the perfect scene, you know, like Sakura, Kyudo. So it's like a postcard, Japan postcard.
Yeah, like a movie. It was so beautiful. Yeah.
Nice.
I think my first encounter with martial arts was when I was 5 years old. I saw a Bruce Lee and Jackie Chan movie with my dad, and I watched the Kung Fu The Legend Continues with David Carradine with my dad too. So that's when I first saw it. And I just thought, wow, these people, they're just so powerful and they fight back, especially towards injustice. And I was like, I want to be like that too. And then, but even as a young child, like as a 5-year-old, I did notice that all of the main characters or the head role, you know, people, the main faces were all men. They were Asian male, like Asian males. And then I was like, well, and, you know, at that time, you know, I guess as a kid, you sort of want to find, you know, other people that are like you. And, you know, and you try to do that to find comfort. And I was like, oh, but there's no women, but okay, it's okay. You know, I like, if I don't have a female figure, then I could just, you know, follow a male figurehead, which is fine with me. So then I wanted to do this. And basically, from what I'm hearing, even when I was like 4 years old, my parents tried to put me in different kinds of, after school activities because I guess kids are a lot for parents at a young age. So I'm like, okay, I get it. So, so they put me in like everything like after school programs, and I think like gymnastics, or not gymnastics, I'm sorry, ballet was when I was like 3 or 4 years old. I like the pink tutu, but I got kicked out because I like punched a girl in the face because I didn't speak English. So I don't think that was my path in this life. And I saw these people that were, doing martial arts in the media. And then I said, I wanted to do that. I want to do Kung Fu. I want to do this. And then um, my family enrolled me in an after school jiu-jitsu program at school, but it's like an after school program which is very short term, and that's not how martial arts works, because it's not a seasonal physical activity, it's a lifelong physical activity. So I was in that for a little bit, and then we stopped, and then we were like walking down the street in New York, and there was a karate school there, and then my parents signed me up because that's something I wanted to do. So I did, and the karate style I did was Matsubayashi Shorin-ryu, and so I was in that for like 12 years. Okay, so yeah, so I did like martial arts like since I was little, so that's like just part of me. With Naginata in particular, I first heard about it from my grandmother because my mother's Japanese, and she's like a Japanese national, not Japanese American. So we still have like the connection there. And I didn't speak English until I was like 4 or 5 years old. And I was like put in the middle of a preschool, and I had to be the ESL kid. So like my grandmother would tell me about how she had to do this thing with that it kind of looked like a bow, but not really, because I did karate, right? So we had the kobudo weapons, and so I was studying the bow at one point, and I showed it to her when I was like 11 years old in 6th grade, and then she's like, "Oh, like Baba did Naginata," and I was like, "Huh?" And then so I think like she took my bow and she was like doing some stuff, and I was like, "All right, what is this?" And I googled it. I literally googled it, and then found out that, oh, this kind of looks like kendo, but not really. It's like with the long thing, right? So I was like, oh, this sparked my curiosity, and then I just tried to search for it a little bit, but no dojo back then. And then I searched again when I was 13, no dojo, but then I searched harder, and I guess Google internet search skills got better when I was 16 as a high schooler, and I found a dojo nearby in New York, in Soho, and then I just signed up. So that was my first encounter with Naginata in particular. And my grandmother, when she did it, it was during World War II. So she had it in PE class. Yeah, so you kind of know what kind of style she did. Very different than the one I do. So, but yeah, she had it as her PE class. And I was like, wow, that is awesome. Like, I'd rather take that as my PE class than dodgeball any day, because this is, but she had all kata and, that version.
The real version.
It's really interesting how in every conversation I had with other martial artists, no matter what the system, Bruce Lee comes out as mainly in the West, probably, as a big influence, and the reason or original motivation to join a dojo. In your case, is Bruce Lee and your grandmom. So that's how cool is your grandmom that is in the same level of Bruce Lee.
Okay, so my experience with martial arts, I had zero interest in martial arts before I came to Japan. I mean, we all grew up with the Karate Kid, right? Well, maybe not Katie, because she's a generation after us. But when I came to Japan, I just came I was only supposed to be here for 1 or 2 years as a gap year after university. I wanted to come here and earn some yen, a lot of yen. So I was going to go back home and study journalism, do my master's in journalism. So while I was here, I came here to teach English, and coincidentally, my neighbor in the apartment, well, I worked with him as well. He taught at the same English school as me, and we were talking one day at work, and I said, I'm only going to be here for a year, so I'd like to learn something Japanesey while I'm here, and anything is fine. And it could have been flower arranging, it could have been, tea ceremony, but just coincidentally, that he was a student of Ando Sensei's. So he said, well, why don't you come with me to my Aikido class and check it out? And if you like it, you can try that. So yeah, so at that time I was living about an hour away from the dojo by train, and I came with him to watch class, and I just fell in love with it at like literally first sight. I watched the class, and I didn't know anything at the time, but I remember everybody in the beginning, everybody lines up in Seiza, and I just thought it was so beautiful. Everybody, beautiful posture, and the beautiful the dogis, the uniforms, and then Ando Sensei demonstrated a technique, and he did a kind of a kaiten technique, a pivot, and he was wearing the hakama, and I just fell in love with it, so I joined immediately. And at that time I was going through twice a week to train, and yeah, and I just then I was like, twice a week is not enough, so then I was trying to increase the number of times that I was training, and it just kind of crept up and up until I was training every day. So by that time I decided that I really wanted to take Aikido back to South Africa, because obviously we have the history of apartheid there, and I felt that the philosophy of Aikido, I think all traditional martial arts have that kind of same philosophy of working on the self and improving the self, but specifically Aikido, and I felt like the Japanese culture that was kind of entwined with Aikido, I felt that it could really help us in South Africa to solve a lot of the problems that are left over from apartheid. So I thought, okay, I'll just get my brown belt, and then I'll go back home and I'll open my own dojo. And then obviously I got my brown belt, and I was like, yeah, no, still not enough. So then I thought, I get my black belt, and then got my black belt, and then it just kind of has extended on, and then I'm still here. So, which is weird, because I'm still like, yeah, I'm gonna go home really soon, like. So yeah, that's how I started doing Aikido, and I think I was just really lucky that I got introduced to Ando Sensei, and I was exposed early on to such a high level of instruction. So
yeah, Japan never really had an official lockdown. We just due to the law and the legal reasons and rights of citizens in Japan, they don't do lockdown. However, we are told by our city mayors to stay inside. And after that took effect in Tokyo, Saitama, Osaka, Nagoya, a lot of other like centers where there were high numbers of COVID cases, the dojos throughout the country shut, just because usually they're located within gymnasiums, which is where a lot of sports and a lot of martial arts, like Budokan as well, martial arts center, where everybody's together and there's large numbers of people. So everything just sort of got shut down over the space of a couple of weeks. And yeah, it lasted for a couple of months. And in that time, so Kyudo, if you have a makiwara, which is heavily compressed, like straw, it's like a straw butt is what it's called in English, but it's a really large circle, and you stand a meter away from it and you can shoot arrows. So the main thing I was worried about was that I would, like, if you're not doing it every day or every second day or so, it becomes very like hard to pull the bow, to be honest. So your muscles and your like everything sort of your muscle memory and everything sort of goes down. So I can't imagine not doing anything for 3 months. So yeah, I have a makiwara, which I was using daily, and not being in front of the target. Just I mentioned when I was making videos for Budo Ko that it helped me to sort of, it brought me back to just my technique, which is honestly not the best. And my teacher just said, look, just take videos of each arrow that you shoot and just go from there. And you can do like, self-improvement over the couple of months that we weren't allowed to use the dojo. It really, really stepped my technique up a lot, and like I improved my shooting, which is great. So I used it to my advantage. However, there are other people who do not have makiwana, and it was really hard for them to get back into it after. Some people, it was like 6 months that they hadn't picked a bow up. Yeah, and especially if you're 60 or 70 years old, it's really like, and they're take, so they're using bamboo. So we had people like snapping their bows because they hadn't been used for months at a time. So there was a lot of like accidents happening and people like hurting their shoulders and that sort of thing, like trying to get back into it like all of a sudden. So it was just case by case sort of thing. Some people had positive outcomes or they just made the best of it, and others it's quite challenging because the social aspect of Kyudo is very important for a lot of people as well. It's nice to see our friends and our Kyudo family in our dojo, and not having that support network or being able to see them, it's really lonely for some people, especially there's a lot of retirees at my dojo. So just not having that daily contact with people outside of their own family is a little bit like, get a bit depressed, you know? So yeah, that side of it was not the best, to be honest, but we're back again now in the dojo in Japan. However, in the last few weeks, Hokkaido, numbers of people, so just this is December 2020, numbers of people have started to rise again. So Osaka has been told sort of for the next little while to be staying in jishiku, to try to stay without going out as much as possible. And I'm waiting for the Tokyo and Saitama for it to like come down, because usually it starts at Hokkaido and sort of trickles down to being, you know, you've got to stay at home in the weekends and that sort of thing. So the numbers of cases haven't really like disappeared at all. We're having our third wave, which is it's like come back again because of the cold and cold and flu season. And I guess, yeah, so I'm waiting to see if dojos will shut down again. So I'm really like hoping and praying that they don't. However, I've got like my heart ready, like kokoro no junbi, which is you know, being prepared for the worst case scenario. However, yeah, so I'm not sure what's going to happen in the next couple of weeks. However, yeah, it's kind of wait and see at the moment.
Let's hope no. I think you're touching now, and that's one of the new topics for maybe another session, and is this social role of Budo.
It's so important. It's so important.
Especially in Japan. I think especially in Japan, because it's part of society. Like now you mentioned retirees or maybe kids or in high school, especially kendo or judo, which is like the core of some of these kids. So important. But I think that's those 3-hour topics that we might need a lot of time to talk about that. But I have a question similar around that area.
I just wanted to add in one thing, if it's okay.
Yes.
Kyudo is, you do it by yourself, and everyone's like, it's your individual thing, it's by yourself. But you know, there's so many relationships that happen with every martial art. So you're not by yourself, and you're getting input and communication every day, talking to different people and networking. And so yeah, it's just that kind of thing. I guess COVID, it really does affect.
Well, you can't do it. I think it's very simple. Like, you just can't do it. But okay, the US is a little I guess it could be a little more complicated because it depends on the state. So some states, like if you're in the red states, in the middle of the country, or in the South, you probably were back in business after about 2-3 months. However, the more densely populated cities that are in the states, either all the way on the East Coast, like mine, or all the way on the West Coast, they were more strict about it. So New York in particular, we were hit very hard with COVID. Yeah, basically. So essentially, right when this breakout was going on, immediate lockdown. So everything was shut down practically. And they did start to lift it, and New York City has stricter requirements than the rest of New York State, just because we're so densely populated. That's really what it is. Okay. So basically, you can't go to like big public gatherings and say, oh, you can't do it for more than people more than 10, groups more of 10, whatever. But you can't really do that in New York City anyway, because every 2 inches there's another group of 10 people, because of just how densely populated this city is. Yeah, so basically everything got shut down, and especially the gyms and everything. I haven't been able to set foot in a dojo here since March. Yeah, it sucks. And only in September, de Blasio, who's the mayor of New York City, and I think like Cuomo, New York State, basically said, oh yeah, everywhere else in the state you're allowed to have gyms reopen, but it's not the gym you are talking about, like a Taikan. Okay, it's not that kind of gym. We're talking about like Equinox, like like a fitness gym where you lift weights and stuff. Okay, those are allowed to open.
Huh? Really?
They're allowed to open. However, in New York City, we were allowed to open the gyms much later than the rest of the state. And they restricted it to, you could only have a few people in at a time, and you cannot have indoor group fitness, which is still the case right now. And that is why no dojos have been able to reopen since the initial outbreak in March, because they say, okay, if you're in an enclosed space with a big group of people, you're more at risk, even if you have masks. It's pretty true. The virus is pretty aggressive, and it spreads easily. So we haven't been able to train at all. And that's the case in New York City. So I think like there was 2 times I was able to escape and go to Maryland, which is about 3 hours or so south of New York City, and I was able to train there in the dojo because that state was a little more lax with the requirements. It's also less densely populated than the middle of Manhattan, right? And so I had to go out of state in order to train.
You escaped just to train. You escaped just to train.
Just to train. Now, there are bigger problems though, and I mean, outside of training, a huge problem which is going on in New York City and in other places in the country where there are strict requirements is that a lot of dojos are going out of business, and that's honestly more tragic in my opinion compared to not being able to train, because that's terrible. And most places in New York City, most people rent. That's just like the New York thing, you rent, because it's extremely expensive to own property. It's like impossible, right? So very few dojos have their own personal private space and permanent space. So people would be renting, and they'd be renting from studios, or they would be on like a 10-year rental lease or something. Like we have those things here, and they can't pay the rent because they collect dues. So they would shut down. So that's a problem. And I know that with people here and some other arts, what they would do is like, for a while when it was warm outside, because right now it's December, so it's getting cold in New York. We have 4 seasons. We're in the Northeast, so it matters. Because
I don't have 4 seasons
down in Florida.
I have one.
I thought only Japan had 4 seasons, like nowhere else in the world has like that.
Japan has 6 seasons. Sorry.
I mean, well, if I was down in Florida, for example, which is more of a tropical weather, or it's a little warmer, you could do like outdoor stuff and go on the beach all year round, like what all those karate masters did when the weapons ban happened there, right? And all that stuff and all that history. You can do that, but in New York City, you can't really do that. And because it starts to get cold, you can't really go outside. Okay. And that's very limited. Then also, I think there's little issues here because, my dad does Shorin karate and he practices the bow. He goes outside, you know, in the middle of the city, and then he is practicing. You have cops stopping, and they're like, "What are you doing?" Because you understand, it's like martial arts is not a normal thing here, right?
Yeah.
So they're like, any person who doesn't know anything about it is going to think it's this alien thing, and then they're just like, "What is this guy doing here, swinging this huge stick? Like, is he like, you know?" So it's a problem. And then also with the parks, like I remember when I was asked to record the Naginata portion for this project, and I was like, "Oh, you know," I was like, "Oh, can't you just do it outside? Can't you record it at the house of Naginata?" I'm like, "I don't think you understand. This thing is like 225 centimeters. Just the thing itself, right? And then you have to factor in the human, which is in between 5 feet to 6 feet tall, right? And you're swinging the thing up for a lot of the techniques, right? You just hit the ceiling. You can't do it effectively. And then you have to worry about a small space, because New York City and Japan have that in common, where we have small ass apartments. And so you will knock everything out if you're trying to swing a thing around, right? And so you can't practice with the thing. Okay. And then if I go outside, right? And then, like I said before, you can't really social distance in a park of groups of less than 10 people when there's like 2 inches away there's another group of 10 people there. You just can't really do it. And then it's because if you're swinging the thing, you're going to hit somebody, and then you're going to get sued for battery. And so it's just like not like Naginata is not a feasible thing to do outside. In person, though, I think that the distance is sufficient enough to take proper social distancing. And this was an inside joke that we had at, you know, the dojo. The dojo I'm at is like, you know, basically Kendo dojo shared with other, you know, people, almost like a Budokan, right? But for some reason, some people in the Kendo group tested positive. Right during the initial breakout. But no one in the Naginata group tested positive. And we were like, "Oh, that's a little bit interesting." And, you know, we had to talk about this because, you know, we needed to figure out, you know, the tracing and stuff, right? But I was just like, okay, that's interesting. I guess Naginata, the distance is, the Mai is so far that we're taking social distancing anyway. So that's why none of us tested positive. And then even when I was at but even when I was coaching at Columbia, for example, like no one tested positive in the group, which was interesting. And I'm like, oh, well, I guess we take proper social distancing with a huge ass weapon, but it's like, but you can't do it outside, you know. So
you know, again, I think you're mentioning something that again can give us another topic, which is post-COVID. What will be the impact in schools, in even styles? Good, I believe, could be an opportunity. I work in advertisement, so I'm always looking for what will be the next trend and what will be the opportunities. You know? Which I think, I mean, from if you get you make lemonade from the lemons, right? So I see something. But we can talk about that, probably not today, but
so the same, I think, was it the end of April or May? And then the Japanese government declared the state of emergencies, and then we had to close the dojo. I think we were closed for 1 or 2 months maybe, and so obviously none of our students could come, but luckily we do have our own facilities here, our own dojo here. So so at that time, it's the moment now, it's me and Ano Sensei and one other staff member. So we were, and he lives like literally 2 blocks down the road. So we were lucky that we could make our own little bubble in our own little dojo here. So we've been training pretty consistently, and again, I think the same as Jessica said, it helped us to, because then it was just the 2 of us, and we trained intensively every day with Ano Sensei for like we did some Zoom lessons, we did online lessons, and learning how to adapt the techniques and teaching for Zoom, and then again in the morning doing intensively 2 hours every day with Ano Sensei. It was just like a yes, was in a way an opportunity that we were really lucky to have. So we've opened again now, and initially we just did no contact training, but Ando Sensei did that like one lesson. He was like, no, this is boring. So now we're just back to normal training, but obviously with masks and then disinfectant protocols when everybody comes in the door, and a little smaller classes. But again, that's been kind of another opportunity for us. Again, everybody is very intensive training. And new training methods and new teaching techniques. So it's been actually quite good for us in terms of that. But yeah, like Jessica said, the numbers are going up. They're going up in Hokkaido, and we don't know. I think Osaka now has just declared another local state of emergency. So we don't know what's going to happen. We close over the Christmas, the year-end holidays. So we're just trying to get to there, and then we'll see what
end of the year.